A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone. Amity School of Economics, Amity University, Noida, was founded in 2009 as a specialized institute in economics under the auspices of Amity University. Today, ASC offers both undergraduate and postgraduate programs combining all of the core analytical and quantitative techniques required by modern economic graduates. ASC attempts to create a realistic learning atmosphere while also owning students' communication abilities through regular discussions and presentations on current problems and debates. Amity University is a firm believer in fostering a dynamic flow of knowledge, and conferences like these fulfill that object admirably. We believe that the Sustainable Development Goals represent the way forward for development, innovation, and a healthy environment, and we have worked relentlessly to raise awareness about them. Our goal is to integrate knowledge and innovation through these goals under the banner of Amity School of Economics' fifth International Conference on Sustainable Development Goals, Harnessing Innovation, Technology, and Society 5.0.
Sustainable development is the overarching paradigm of the United Nations. The concept of sustainable development was described by the 1987 Brundtland Commission report as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. SDGs, also known as the Global Goals, were approved by the United Nations in 2015 as a worldwide call to action to eradicate poverty, safeguard the environment, and guarantee that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Innovation is thus the key element necessary for achieving these sustainable development goals. While every company and organization operating in the contemporary world is different, they all face a common challenge: the need for correctness and access to real life insight across processes, partners, products, and people. That's where Industry 4.0 comes into play. Industry 4.0 isn't just about investing in new technology and tools to improve manufacturing efficiency, it's about revolutionizing the way your entire business operates and grows.
This brings us to technical session 2, Sustainable Development and New Dimensions in Industry 4.0. Our track consists of 9 subtopics, which are Industry 4.0, Strategy and Operations, Sustainable Open Business Models, Future Workforce, Cooperation between University, Industry, and Innovativeness, Knowledge Management and Technology Transfer, Corporate Environmental Sustainability, Best Practices for Managing Automation, Collaboration between Human and AI, Quality Control and Six Sigma, Simulation, and Lean Management. These topics depict innovation that brings out new dimensions of sustainable development and also unravels the futuristic developments in different fields which contribute to SDGs. Keeping this thought in mind, I would like to call our faculty coordinator for this session, Ms. Pooja Mehra, to introduce our session chairs for technical session 2, Sustainable Development and New Dimensions in Industry 4.0. Ma'am.
It is a great honor for me to welcome and introduce our session chairs for technical session 2. Our first session chair is Dr. Rimpal Manchanda, Associate Professor at School of Humanities and Social Sciences, GD Goenka University, Gurgaon. Dr. Manchanda has a rich blend of industrial experience in the domain of banking and financial institutions for 3 years and more than 12 years in acclaimed academic institutions. Her research interest lies primarily in consumer behavior, gratitude, green materialism, financial behavior, financial development, to name a few. She is an accomplished writer with 9 published work in Scopus and Web of Science to her credit, apart from presenting papers in numerous national and international conferences and seminars. She is also contributing to the research fraternity as a reviewer in the reputed journals Index and Scopus. Today, we are privileged to have an opportunity to get valuable input during the presentations from her On behalf of Amity School of Economics, I welcome you, ma'am, to this international conference.
Thank you, Pooja. It is a pleasure to be part of this conference. Thank you so much.
Our next session chair for the day is Ms. Shivani Mehrotra, having 6 years of extensive work experience in economic, policy, and market research at global and regional level across several industrial domains such as automobile, software, real estate, pharmaceutical, defense, power sport, fast fashion, gems and jewelry, union and state budgets, among others. Currently, she is working with PhD Research Bureau, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry as a research official. She has authored and co-authored several articles on various macroeconomic issues, such as job creation in India, roadmap for Indian economy, future of Indian transportation sector, green strategies for sustainable revival of growth, to name a few. Ms. Mehrotra has a myriad of interest, as she is also a poetry blogger on WordPress. Her poetry reflects how Mother Nature has best ways to sustain itself. She has co-authored with notable publishing houses like Half Baked Beans and Notion Publishing on some of her poetry works. Today, I'm privileged to take this opportunity to welcome prolific writer and avid researcher among us to get deeper insight into the world of sustainability from the industry perspective. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am, for inviting me to the conference.
Thank you. Without further ado, let us get started with our presentation. I request Ms. Sunidhi Kapoor and Mr. Paul Joseph to take over the session further.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's take a minute and see what our sponsors have in store for us. I request the session chairs to please switch on their cameras. It will be great to actually see you all on the screen for all the presenters here. Session
Cameras are on, actually. Should I?
The camera is on.
Yes, ma'am, you're visible.
Without further ado, let's get started with our presentations. Participants will get a total of 8 minutes to present their paper. A bell will be rung on the 6th minute, indicating 2 minutes are left. The second bell will be rung on the 8th minute, indicating the time given has elapsed. Following this, the 2 minutes of question and answer session will be in order. We have with us Ms. Prachi Agarwal from the Albagh Educational Institute, Agra, to take over with her presentations.
Good afternoon to each and everyone present here. I am Prachi Agarwal from the Albagh Educational Institute, Agra, under the supervision of Swami Prasad Saxena, a professor at Macroeconomics and Finance in the Department of Commerce. My topic for today is Sustainable Industrialization in India, Trends and Policy Implications. Sustainable Development Goals provide an international framework to achieve 2030 so as to be more equitable, resilient, and peaceful, prosperous society. The SDGs are not legal bindings, but are obligations of the countries to reorient domestic spending and legal priorities. India being an emerging economy has emerged itself in many aspects. The Government of India is focusing on the areas where development is needful, and sustainable development in industry 4.0 is one of them. As the second most populous country in the world, India plays a leading role to determine the relative success of SDGs. Like other nations, India has also committed to implement the SDGs on the basis of nationally defined indicators. NITI Aayog has mapped Sustainable Development Goals with other programs. The Agenda 2030 has taken into consideration the social, economic, environmental, and environmental objectives to define the development goals. The Government of India initiated many programs achievement of SDGs, ensuring Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, the motto of leaving no one behind. The sustainable and environment-friendly production, that is the SEIP, the awareness program that has been initiated by the Government of India, and the Government of India is taking hard to achieve this. As sustainable means not to harm anyone, and environment friendly means to save the environment. But it should be like that. It should be environment friendly. The focused conversation.
Prachi, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you see our screen?
Ma'am, actually, I'm able to see the screen, but not actually my PPTs on the screen.
We are sharing your PPT, so we just need to make sure that you can see the PPT while presenting.
No, ma'am, I'm not able to see my PPT.
Ma'am, just a second. We'll just take care of the glitch.
Shall I continue?
Ma'am, can you try sharing your screen, your PPT on your screen, please?
Ma'am, actually, I'm on my mobile and my PPT is on my laptop.
All right, ma'am, because we are not really sure you're on which slide, so we'll just go ahead.
Okay.
Please inform us whenever you want us to change the slide, please.
Okay. So right now I'm slide number 4.
Ma'am, is this the right slide or the next slide?
Ma'am, sir, right now I'm slide number 4.
This one, ma'am?
So I'm not able to see the slide.
Just a second, ma'am. Okay, ma'am, let's do one thing. You may continue the slides. I'll just change the slide as I hear and understand that which slide it's on. So you can continue, ma'am. That's not a problem.
Okay. So right now I'm on slide number 4. That is a sustainable and environment-friendly industry production. That is an awareness program by Government of India, and Government of India is trying very hard to achieve this goal. And the industrial production should be environment friendly so that it may not harm the society or the economy. So the India's presentation in assembling the is lingered behind when they contrasted with the help of area and furthermore in the correlation with China and the proportion of now I'm able to see slides.
Yes, ma'am. You are able to see now.
Yes. Now I'm
Ma'am,
able to speak.
the right slide?
Yes, sir. This
Yeah.
is the right
Thank
slide.
you, ma'am. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Please continue.
Okay. So for the focus conversation, the objectives indicated under goal 9 might be gathered to development of globally aggressive, socially comprehensive, and naturally sustainable friendly areas, fortifying STI ability at all the levels, that is the
Yes, ma'am, I'm
sustainable
able to join.
technological,
I'm able to join. Soccer Barua.
outfitting information and communication technology for
And you'll be
improvement.
playing
And
PPT, you'll be playing, no?
I'm so
PPT.
sorry, ma'am. All the participants, all the members in the meeting are supposed to mute their mics. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Please continue.
now the third point is outfitting the ITC, that is the information and communication technology for the improvement and building a strong foundation. Next slide, sir, please. Next slide. Okay, so the industrial sector in our country has also faced a drastic change from industry 1.0 to industry 4.0. This is called the industrial revolution. There is a paradigm shift in the industrial revolution one in the 1800s, in which the field of mechanization was steam power and water power were used. In the second industrial revolution, it was introduced in the beginning of the 20th century, where the electrical energy is intensively used as the primary source of power was electricity. The mass production and assembly line was the main function in 2.0. The introduction of the third industrial revolution in the last few decades of the 20th century, that is 1975, where the widespread digitalization took place, the innovation in the manufacture of electronic devices, software, system development, CNC robotics were introduced were in industrial third revolution. With the vision of the future industrial production expected to contain efficient and modular manufacturing systems where the products control the manufacturing processes. This future expectations introduced the term Industry 4.0. It was firstly introduced by Germany and also known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution or the Digital Revolution. Basically consists of the IoT, that is Internet of Things. Next slide, sir. Industry 4.0 basically deals with the automation technology, robots, the gantry, and the IoT. Its major contribution to the sustainable development can be noted as it leads to the cleaner and more production. It helps in the improvement of the industrial productivity, helps in reduction of the waste. Although e-waste is another criteria, creation of more employment opportunities, effective production and planning, better utilization of manpower, production and process reports and management information. Next slide, sir. Now, the research problem over here is that Industry 4.0 anticipated development goals as a policy implication taken by the government of India lay impact on the multiple dimensions of society, like the manufacturing, competitiveness of the nation, and the nature of employment, profitability. So, to do the impact of Industry 4.0 and other policy changes by the government of India in the manufacturing sector, the manufacturing GVA, that is the proportion of manufacturing sector in the total GDP, has been taken into consideration, and with respect to that, export performance of the industry of the country has been analyzed. Next slide, sir. Now, the objective of my study are there are basically two objectives. First, to know the trend of the manufacturing GVA and the export performance. The second objective is to analyze the impact of government policy, including SDGs and Industry 4.0 on the manufacturing GVA and export performance. So my main focus of this paper is manufacturing GVA and export performance. Next slide, sir. I have collected certain reviews. Out of this, the most prominent has been the robot Solo. In 1956, he had made he has made a study on the efficient development that on the estimated as the increment in the yield of each labor. The result from the expansion is how much the capital per specialist or the capital aggregation. So next slide. So please skip this slide also. Next slide, sir. Okay. The research gap. All the previous studies has been focusing on what is industrial in 4.0 and what is the manufacturing sector, but nobody has been till now has been focused on how it may impact on our economy. So the present paper focuses on the ninth SDG, that is in goal number 9 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and Industry 4.0, which relates to the industry, innovative and infrastructure. Basically, infrastructure refers to the transportation, education, and energy, EDC. The investment in the infrastructure would lead to sustainable development of many countries. India has improved its position in the infrastructure and industry sector. The purpose of this paper is to analyze the present status of SDG 9 with reference to the sustainable industrialization, that is part number 2 of goal number 9, which states that the promotion of inclusive and sustainable industrialization and to raise the share of employment and GDP in the industrial sector and to double its share in least developing country by 2040. This is the agenda taken by the government of India. However, the main focus of the paper is to analyze the effect of government policies and changes in the technique of production to industry 4.0. Next slide, sir. Okay, now this is the trend. The blue line over here is showing the manufacturing GDP, that is the percentage of the manufacturing sector in the total GDP. And the gray line is showing the percentage change in the exports of our country, that is the export performance of the country. We all can see that there is a time series, there is a downfall, and again it has been rising up. So in 2015, you can see in 2015 there is a downfall when the government of India adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have seen that the policy changes may impact over here. This type of cycle shows that there is some kind of structural break. All the policies implemented by the government of India shows that there exists a structural break. So for this purpose, by seeing this type of data, it has been studied that the Chow breakpoint test analysis has been taken into consideration.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. 2 minutes left for the presentation. Then we'll move to question and answer. So 2 minutes left, ma'am.
No problem. So the child break test basically tells if there exists a structural break or not. I have applied this test in this type of data, and the conclusion of my study says that there exists a structural break. The stability diagnostic test has been applied in which probability value is 0.00, which shows that the null hypothesis has been accepted. So this is the trend for manufacturing GVA. We have seen that during 2008, when the global recession has been in our country, the global recession has been destroyed the country, has been destroyed the economics of each and every sector in the country. The macroeconomic variables were not running well, so the overall export performance has also been declined. But the ratio of manufacturing GDP of our country is maintained. It is around 20 to 25% from the year 1980s to 2020 till now. So next slide. Some of the policy changes are like we have new computer policy, software policy, we have Make in India, Made in India, digital policy, national strategy for artificial intelligence, we have data intermediaries, EDC, we have a number of policies taken by the government of India. Next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. Now, this is the research methodology. As I have told that I have taken the data of past 40 years, that is 1980 to 2020, which has been collected from the World Bank and Ministry of Finance, Government of India. And basically, I have applied Chow breakpoint test or to determine this structural break in the series for both manufacturing GVA and export separately. Next slide, sir. Okay, the Chow breakpoint test of the structural analysis, the Chow breakpoint test has been applied, and it says that there exists a breakpoint in both the series, that is the manufacturing GVA and export performance. The analysis part is twofold: the stability diagnostic and the structural breakpoint analysis. Next slide, sir.
Ma'am, the 10 minutes are over. If you can conclude, should I go
yes,
to the...
Yes, sir. I am concluding. These are my findings. This is I think last slide. Okay. The modern policy can possibly straightforwardly change the modern construction of an economy is heading, and since modern rebuilding is at the core of industrialization based knowledge development, the utilization of the modern policy should be on the critical policy. So please, next slide. Okay, now this is the conclusion. This is my conclusion that that India as a growing economy is also facing some kind of problems also. So At the time of like the government of India is being like what the Nitin Gadkari has been said that we will move on towards the green economy and we will use the like vehicles that are being battery operated. So this is the steps taken, certain steps has been taken by the government to make the economy more green. Thank you so much. Last slide is thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll move into the question answer session. So I request the session chairs to ask questions to the participant.
Prachi, you have looked at sustainable industrialization in India, trends and policy implications, right?
Yes.
And your objectives were to check the trend and then what are the government policies that have been there, right? And you, since the presentation initially was not visible and then voice is also not very clear, I don't have a question right now, but I have some inputs for you right now. So there have been certain barriers in the implementation of Industry 4.0, like weak infrastructure, availability of cheap labor, costly, installation of technologies, and obviously, have you looked at the government policies which are looking into these areas? And most importantly, the lack of knowledge with about the Industry 4.2 and how about the technology that is advancing at light speed nowadays.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, the thing is, India has not just achieved the target of Industry 4.0. It is very new to us. By the commencement of this SDGs, that are the Sustainable Development Goals, it has been like came into force from 2016. But after that, we have faced the pandemic scene in 2019. It has been continued till 2022. Now the situations are being good by the day to day. But the scene is that the sustainable goals that on which the government of India is focusing has not been achieved till yet just because of the global situations that our country has been facing. Nowadays, the government of India is taking certain steps like making the economy green. They are taking steps to reduce the pollution, to reduce the carbon emission, to use the automatic vehicles, to use automatic machinery for the industrial sector also, to reduce pollution. But I am as a research scholar is trying to now doing a work on like how the batteries, that lithium ion batteries that are using in the vehicles or in the other machinery, how they are also a part of like creating an e-waste in the country.
Right.
So I'm going to do in this research in this also.
So maybe you are working on how we can reduce that e-waste.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but which stage of research you are right now? What are you doing right now currently?
Ma'am, actually, my topic for PhD is external commercial borrowings. That is the part of external debt of I'm very eager about the green economy, so I'm just doing a research work and a paper work on this.
All right, this is for your research paper, not related to your PhD. Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much.
Great job, Prachi. Firstly, my question is, have you like calculated the share of manufacturing in the GVA on the current prices or on the constant prices?
I have taken the data from the World Bank, and it has been given that GDP on the constant prices and the percentage of manufacturing sector in the GVA, that is the manufacturing GVA.
Yeah. So it's on the constant prices, right? Okay. Okay. But okay. And besides that, for the export part, have you incorporated only the manufacturing products, or have you taken the export as a whole?
I have taken all the goods and services, all the goods.
Okay. Then, yeah. So then don't you think in your analysis that you just presented, the trend line, the graph that you presented, should it be particularly restricted to the manufacturing share in the GVA and the export of the manufacturing sector only? And that could have given you the better glimpse of, I mean, the trend that you were trying to portray, because I have also missed on to some certain slides because of voice issue and the visibility issue, but this was my first impression, but never mind. So my question is, it's up to you. I mean, it's an open-ended question, that should India be right now focused on, manufacturing, given the industry 4.0 is actually in the genes of India right now, and Modi ji is promoting, digitization and everything. So, or should it focus on the sustainability part, or should it just go, parallelly, like industry 4.0 on one hand and sustainability on the other hand?
And actually, they should go both the things in the hand. They should go hand
Actually,
by
given
hand.
the fact that India is a developing nation, it's not a developed country yet. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, the technology basically transmitted to India from Russia. So, ma'am, the government of India, like Modi ji, has been focusing on the industrial sector also. Like they have in 2015, they have made the policy that Made in India policy, that in the homemade products should be used, and they have banned all the products that has been importing to us from China. And ma'am, this is the first step that our industrialists should wake up and should produce more to sell more. And with that, many ministries in my line are tackling this problem of SDGs also. Like our transport minister is also doing this.
So actually, okay, I completely agree what you are saying, but this is just not an overnight thing, right? So, and India, do you think, yeah. So, but do you think India has this much of capital that it could manufacture on its own? Because I think India is at a very delicate point where it needs to manufacture on its own, given the Atmanirbhar campaign. But at the same time, it really needs to import as well, because I mean, if it spends, just time in manufacturing, I think it could really lag behind if it could, import from the developing nations. So I think, I mean, I am just asking, so do you think that India has enough working capital for this?
None actually India do not have. So they borrow from other countries, like the part of public debt we can say.
Yeah.
The major part of public debt has been used in the infrastructure sector. The government of India, by borrowing from the other countries, why they borrow? Because the rate of interest is very less in the foreign market. So they borrow and they use that money. Ma'am, there are certain types of corruption also in our country.
Yeah.
We all know there is corruption in the country. The money
Okay.
which has been used in such kind of activities is not being happening as it had to be.
Okay, Prachi. Okay, but still, okay, I thank you for your response, but I think a little needs to be dig more into this.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, session chairs. I would now request Mr. Saugata Barua from Guwahati University, sharing his paper titled Work-Life Balance, Concerns of Health Workers in the Context of COVID-19 Pandemic.
Very good afternoon to all the members present there in MET Business School, Noida. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Just a second, we'll just put on your presentation.
Okay.
Also, will you be able to share your presentation? If that's...
Yes, I'll be able to share my presentation. I have my presentation with me.
Yes, sir. Thank
So
you.
I'm sharing my presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Excuse me, I just need a little bit of help.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to share, I have it in my hard disk, C drive. So D drive.
It's okay,
It's
sir.
okay, sir. Could you just try sharing once, even if it's there on your key drive? If that's not possible, we'll figure something out.
So,
Sir, you have to open
I'll
the.
just open and share it. Okay.
Sir, you have to open the PPT first at your end.
Oh.
Okay, and then go to share screen and share.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've opened my PPT.
Yes, sir. So you just have to go on share screen on Zoom, and you've opened your PPT, and then you just have to select the PPT window and your screen will be automatically shared.
No, but the Zoom is.
Yeah, share
Sir,
screen.
are you able to see on the Zoom there is a green color tab, share screen option?
Actually, Zoom is not opening the window
It's
right now.
minimized. I think it's minimized. You have to, sir, maximize first. On a taskbar, there is a Zoom icon. You have to maximize first.
Yes. So I'm sharing my screen. Actually, I've opened my PPT. Now I've clicked on share screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Sir, now you have to go on a Zoom platform first.
New platform.
Zoom platform. You have to open first on Zoom, sir. And I think the Zoom is minimized in a taskbar.
Share screen, no?
Yes, there is a green color tab of share screen.
Shares on the share PowerPoint, right? Microsoft
Yes.
SharePoint.
Sir, are you able to see your PPT there?
Yes, I'm able to see, but then I've also opened the PPT. So now how to share it?
Yeah, first click on share screen option, sir. Share screen option you have to click first.
Sorry. Share, okay.
If our organizer have a PPT at least, and then they can also share.
Just a second. Should I go on Microsoft OneDrive or Box? How to share from the hard disk? Because I already.
So let's do one thing. We'll share the screen of your presentation and then we could go forward. You
Right,
could just
right.
tell us when the
Right.
next slide comes, you can just inform us and we'll move to the next slide as well.
Okay.
That work?
That will be fine. That will be fine.
Yeah, just a minute, sir.
Okay. Yes.
So is the slide visible?
Yes. It is visible. It is visible.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So first of all, a very warm good afternoon to all the members present there in MET Business School, Noida. I'm really delighted to be here to present my topic here. To a brief introduction of myself, I am Mr. Saugat Barua. I am the research scholar in the Department of Business Administration, Guwahati University, and currently pursuing my PhD on the topic of work-life balance of health workers. So, sir, can you just go to the introductory slide?
Yes, sir. The introductory slide is on the
Yes,
screen.
the first slide. The first slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is my topic. Actually, this topic is somewhat related to my PhD topic, which is work-life balance concerns of health workers in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. So actually, basically, I'm doing my study during the pandemic session that has been happening here, and talking about health workers. I'm presently working on health workers also includes doctors, nurses, the medical lab technicians, and how they are performing, how they are maintaining the work-life balance in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a joint presentation. I am the first presenter. This is Saugat Barua, and I also have a co-presenter who is Dr. Samir Sarkar. He's my PhD guide, and he's also the assistant professor in the Department of Business Administration, Guwahati University. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So basically, this is a work-life balance. First and foremost thing is that we should know about what is the meaning of work-life balance, basically. So basically, the work-life balance is about. So the work-life balance is about people having a measure of control over when, where, and how they work, basically. So it is achieved when an individual's right to a fulfilled life inside and outside work is accepted and respected as a norm to the mutual benefit of the individual, organization, as well as a society. So this is a very holistic approach that we are looking into it. And so how to maintain this work-life balance. So basically, it is believed that balancing a successful career with the personal or family life can be challenging and impacts on a person's satisfaction in their work and personal life. So this is basically the introduction regarding work-life balance. So the study of work-life balance has changed over the years, and therefore this presentation aims to highlight the recent advances in the fields of work-life balance of the health workers. So that was basically regarding the introductory part of work-life balance. Now let us come to COVID-19, which is a burning topic that has been happening now. So this is about COVID-19. So I'm conducting my study in the age of COVID-19 and how the health workers maintain their work-life balance during the period of COVID-19. So regarding COVID-19, so what is COVID-19? So it was since the late 2019 to the early 2020s. So the sudden outbreak of COVID-19 among the general human population in the city of Wuhan, China. So COVID-19 originated in the city of Wuhan in the country of China, which was caused by the transmission of a novel coronavirus, which is also called as SARS-CoV-2. So there has been a wide range of efforts to develop special treatments for COVID-19 with limited success. In the current scenario, 3 leading infectious disease experts in China who have personally participated in the clinical management of COVID-19 cases to share their personal observations and to widely suggest what may be important in establishing the treatment strategy. So as it has it has the characteristics of a highly contagious disease, it has quickly spread to countries worldwide and has severely impacted the tourism industry as well. So it is a high time since the emergence and spread of coronavirus or COVID-19 from China has gained much attention without any prophylactic or therapeutic treatments as of now. So this is basically about COVID-19 and why we are conducting the study of COVID-19 in the context of work-life balance of the health workers. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, now we are having a brief discussion about work-life balance of health workers in COVID-19. Let us now come to the factors of work-life balance. What are the factors that determines the work-life balance of the health workers? So basically, when we talk about the factors of work-life balance, the number one factor is control over the time. So so we should have a considerable control over our time. That is we should be able to manage how we manage time over the work, because we have a limited time and we have to spend that limited time in the things that which are very important. So there we have to go into the control over the time. So under control over the time, we have to basically include flexible work arrangements. How we are flexibly making arrangements to control our precious time and to devote the time that is required in the right and efficient manner. So that is all about control over time. Next, number two, we come to leave arrangements. So leave arrangements can be either paid or unpaid for various personal or family matters. Number three, we come is basically the dependent care, So resources and referral services to manage childcare or elder care is all about dependent care. Next, number four, personal convenience. So consider services, lactation rooms, nap rooms, and traveling, vacations, shopping arrangements, and farming on-site ATMs are some of the personal convenience. So what I want to give emphasis is that the personal conveniences aids the people in maintaining work-life balance, because they are able to devote much time to each and every sectors that are there, so that they can give quality time to all the sectors without neglecting any personal sector. So this is so because we have to consider about the travelings, vacations, shopping arrangements, and all on-site ATMs that gives additions to the brand value of a particular individual. So this is all about personal convenience. Next, we go to number 5, employee assistance. So employee assistance for the employees who need help and solutions to job related or personal problems. And lastly, but not the least, we talk about the benefits of the factors of work-life balance. So the benefits, a wide range of other benefits and assistances like various financial and non-financial services sectors have been provided to support the employees, so that they can maintain the work-life balance in a very cohesive manner, and they do not neglect others. And so these are basically my 6 different factors of work-life balance, and how these 6 factors are maintained over a period of time, so that we can easily maintain the various factors of work-life balance. Moving on to the next slide, please. Can we please have the next slide? Am I audible? Can I please have the next slide? I've already finished discussing the factors of work-life balance. So would request you to just slide it to the next slide that is available.
Excuse me, sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. So your time has elapsed. It would be great if you could conclude your presentation. I'll put the presentation back on.
Okay.
if you could conclude. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
I'll just go to the conclusion.
Yes.
Can you give me to the last slide?
Yes,
My
sir.
last slide is the conclusion slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll get to it. Just a
Can
second.
I just go to the objectives, because that is very important. Objectives of the study.
So if you could finish the objectives as well as the conclusion.
Okay. So
Fast,
you
it would be
please
great.
share the objectives, and I'll just run through the objectives and to the conclusion slide.
Yes, sir. Works. But considering that it would be done really fast because we're running a bit short on time. I mean, running a bit late as well. So,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
sir.
So you just give me the conclusion slide. I'll just go to the conclusion slide.
No problem, sir. Let me just share the screen. Yes, sir. The objectives.
Yeah, objectives. I'll just run through the objectives. I'll just run through. So to compare the work-life balance and job satisfaction among health workers working in selected private and government hospitals. Number two, to find out the demographic factors which are responsible for differences in the level of work-life balance and suggest suitable measures to maintain. Number three, to study the factors disturbing work-life balance of health workers and also to determine the major problems associated with the work-life balance. Next, to identify various work-life balance provisions offered by government and private hospitals and to assess the attitude of health workers towards them. And lastly, to understand the linkage between work-life balance of health workers and the productivity of the health workers leading to patient satisfaction. So these are my objectives.
So can we come to the conclusion if that's possible? Because we're running a bit short on time.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go to the last slide then, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So this is my conclusion after doing this study. So the recent study in different parts of the world clearly points out that the problem of work-life balance in the workplace in any sector has been given great importance to increase the efficiency and output of the employees. Great care has been taken to see that a proper work-life balance should be maintained in any field to avoid drudgery and monotony that may affect the physical and mental health of employees and also increase output. So this forms my conclusion. So this is thank you so much. So this is my study on work-life balance of health workers pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I request the session chairs to give their valuable insights. Session chairs.
Hi. Okay, so it was a good job, but I do not have any question. All I just want to say that, yeah, work-life balance, particularly for the COVID-19 frontline workers, has become one of the very important issues given the past 2 years that have actually been gone very stressful for everyone. So this is just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful giving the presentation. Thank you so much for accepting my paper. And thank you to all the members present in the.
All right. From my side, I just want to add on one thing since we are talking about work-life balance already. And there's something called burnout effect that we actually see in doctors and these health workers. Have you looked at any such study?
Yes, actually the study is in an initial period because I'll be having a sample size of around 400 to 500 health workers, which also includes doctors, nurse, paramedical staffs, and all those stuff. And I'll make a separate study on all the sectors and which are the sectors that the work-life balance is difficult to maintain. And I'll also suggest suitable remedial measures.
Right now your focus is health, right?
Sorry?
Health. Right now your focus is health workers, right?
Health workers, including doctors, nurses,
I'm eager to understand what we have compared the private and government medical.
Yes, both government and private.
So what was the outcome? Just quickly, if you can just tell us.
Yes, actually, I'm collecting my data right now in the questionnaires.
Okay. So you don't have the outcome right now.
Getting a very positive response from health workers because of actually most of the health workers that I visited have already given my the feedback that is there. They've already shared their issues, and so I'm working on it, and I'll make a suitable analysis on and also give recommendations. So what can be done to
Did you get any
enhance the-
contrast in private and government sector employees, health workers, in terms
Yes,
of
the
what?
government
Just
sectors
one or
includes-
two lines, anything you have?
Yes, government sectors includes the government medical colleges in Assam, because I'm doing my study in Assam. So I'll be visiting major cities and towns of Assam and going through all the government hospitals.
You have
as
not
well
done that yet, right? You
Yeah,
will
that
be
I have not
doing
done
it.
that.
So you
I'm
don't
on
have
the-
the outcome right now.
I don't have the outcome right now.
Okay, all right then, no question. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, session chairs. I would now like to request Ms. Saina Jain from Amity Business School, Noida, to present a paper titled Analysis of Sustainable Design, Practices for Environment-Friendly Indian Apparel Industry. I guess due to some technical glitch, maybe she is not able to present. So I would like to now invite Ms. Divya Vaid from Chandigarh University, Mohali, to present her paper titled An Analysis of India's Climate Smart Goods Trade.
Ma'am, can you hear us?
Yes,
Divya,
sir.
ma'am?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. I'm here. So, very good afternoon, everyone. I'm sharing my PPT first. Just give me 1 second.
Ma'am, we will share the screen. It's not a problem, just to avoid some technical errors or situations. Hence,
Okay.
yeah. You
Okay.
can just tell us when to move the slides.
Sure, sir.
Take the slides. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so my name is Divya and I'm working as an assistant professor in the Department of USB Economics, Chandigarh University, Mohali. And another author of this paper is Dr. Meenu. She is also assistant professor in Department of Economics, Punjab University, Chandigarh. The title of my paper is An Analysis of India's Climate Smart Goods Trade. Please switch to the next slide. Okay, first is the introduction about the climate smart goods, a kind of background of my study. As we know, the development and growth originated from trade have impact on environment in terms of increased pollution. And for sustainable development and environment quality, the concept of environmental goods and services were introduced by World Trade Organization. The work on liberalizing trade in climate smart goods started when Committee on Trade and Environment is established under Council for Trade and Services in 1994. Please switch to the next one. So WTO recommended a backlist of 54 environmental goods as a starting point for environmental goods agreement in 2014. And also the OECD Euro State for Informal Working Group identified 164 commodities, environmental goods, and World Bank identified 43 environmental goods for tariff elimination by 2030. United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific introduced climate smart goods, which are part of broader group that is environmental goods by considering APEC, OECD, World Bank, and WTO list. UNESCOP list comprised of 64 climate smart goods at 6-digit level. This list has 43 goods from the World Bank list and rest 21 are from APEC, OECD, and WTO list. So first is what are the climate smart goods? So according to UNESCOP report 2011, climate smart goods are defined as components, products, and technologies that tend to have a relatively less adverse impact on the environment. And it also includes low carbon technologies such as wind power generation, solar photovoltaic system, clean coal technologies, and energy efficient lighting. These 4 subgroups include different goods from the SCAP list, such as clean coal technologies comprise these 3 HS codes. Wind power generation technologies composed of these mentioned 6-digit HS code. Solar photovoltaic system comprise 3 HS codes, and the 4th group, that is energy efficient lighting, have only 1 HS code, that is 853931. Whereas rest of the goods which is not included in the above 4 categories put under the 5th category, that is other goods, according to the UNESCO list 2011. Please switch to the next one. Now, India's climate smart goods, as per the UNESCO list, exports share in India's total export was 0.43% in the year 1988, which has increased to 2.17% in the year 2019. Whereas India's climate smart goods imports were recorded 1.33% for the year 1988, which has increased to 2.11% in India's total imports for the year 2019. So as per WTO, encouraging trade in goods and services that benefit the environment can help in improving energy efficiency, quality of life, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and lead to positive impact on air quality, water, soil, and natural resource conservation. Next one, please. Now the objectives of my study. The first one is to analyze the growth rates for whole of the study period, that is 1988-89 to 2019-20, as it is for 32 years. To analyze the structure of India's subcategories of climate smart goods in India's climate smart goods exports and imports at different years of the study period. To analyze the product concentration for India's climate smart goods export and import. Next one, please. Now the data sources. The UNESCO list of 64 climate smart goods is used for computing the growth rate, percentage shares, and the product concentration for India's climate smart goods exports and import. And data for the given 64 CSG is collected from UN Comparate database for the time period, that is 1988-89 to 2019-20. Please switch to the next one. The research methodology. The compound annual growth rates are computed, the percentage shares are analyzed, and the product concentration. And for this, the concentration ratio measure is used. The next one, please. Now, this is my data analysis part. First is growth rates of climate smart good exports, and the growth rates of the considered 64 climate smart goods shows that there are few HS codes out of the 64 which recorded more than 100% growth rate, and there were few goods which has recorded more than 50%, and there were total 44 HS codes out of 64 which has recorded the growth rate between 10% to 50%. And there is only one HS code for the exports which has recorded negative growth rate for whole of the study period. Next one, please. Now, this is the growth rate of CSG imports for whole of the study period. Again, the HS code is, there are different HS codes which have shown the growth rates more than 100%, more than 50%, and between 10 to 50%. But there is no negative growth rate registered by any HS code out of these 64 under the imports for whole of the study period. Next one, please.
Sorry
Now,
to
structure.
interrupt you, ma'am,
Yes.
but 2 minutes are left for your presentation. So if you could please conclude.
Okay. Okay. So shall I conclude?
No, ma'am, you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Minding the 2
That's
minutes.
fine.
Yep.
So we have, next we have structure of climate smart goods exports. For the year 1988, these are the top commodities. Next slide, please, the pie chart. Okay, so these are the commodities which has registered maximum share in the year 1988. And another one, next one, please. And here we have for the last year of the study period that this percentage share has increased for certain commodities. And again, here we have the commodities which has registered more than 40% share in the CSG exports. Next. This is about the imports that I have mentioned few HS codes which have shown the leading trend, upward trend in the climate smart goods import, and lagging means that these commodities have shown the declining trend. Next one. Here in this slide, we have year 1988. And in this year, again, the top HS codes are mentioned, which has recorded maximum share in the India's climate smart goods imports. Next. And in this slide, we have again the HS codes, which has recorded the maximum share for the year 2019 in the imports. Next, please. Now, export concentration. It has revealed, the paper has revealed that the export concentration was low during 1980-89 to 2005-6 for the concentration ratio 4. And later on, up to 2019-20, the export concentration has increased under CR4. But if we compute CR8 during this time period, the export concentration was low for initially 1980 to 2004-5, and later on it has increased from 2005-6 to 2019-20. Next, please. Now, import concentration. Import concentration was low again for initial years up to 2006-7, and it was high for the rest of the years up to 2019-20 in case of both CR4 and CR8. Next one, please. Now, this slide is basically about the frequency of occurrence of CSG under CR4 and CR8 export. So there are basically few commodities, CSG, climate smart good, which has appeared for most of the years of the study period under CR4 and CR8 as well. Next, please. And again, this slide is basically about the climate smart goods, which has appeared in the list of CR4 and CR8 top 4 and top 8 concentrated commodities in case of the imports. Next one. Now here is the conclusion. The product composition changes are witnessed on higher side by imports as compared to the exports of India's climate smart goods during the mentioned time period. And the HS codes, basically the turbines, fuel cells using hydrogen and hydraulic turbines recorded more than 100% growth in both export and import. Also, these HS codes appeared in concentrated product list. Next one, please. The concentrated products with HS code that represent the electric generating sets, and the instrument and appliances for checking voltage are appearing in both export and import of India's climate smart goods for the study period. And out of these products, the HS code, these two HS code registered more than 150% compound annual growth rate for the considered study period. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I request the session chairs to give their valuable inputs. Session chairs.
Yeah. So, Aditya, my one suggestion is rather than using the HS codes, you can use the products, goods, and services so that for the it is more convenient to the audience.
Yes.
Because you are aware of the codes, they are not. So that
in that case, ma'am, the number of slides will increase. That's why I have chosen the HS codes.
Okay, I have one very simple question. Do you think that this trade in climate smart goods can contribute to economic growth and strengthen the trade for India?
Yes, ma'am, of course, we can work on that. That if we have a chance to target those goods which have a kind of less damage to the environment, so it will be better for India in terms of sustainability as well, that we can preserve our resources as well with the help of these goods.
We have seen the trend that how it is in export, it is changing in imported. Have you checked it, how it is overall, how it is contributing to the overall trade?
Basically, ma'am, what I have seen is that few HS codes has maximum share in the export or import. But if we compare the export and import of the India with other countries, like for example, China, then it is really less. So there are chances that we can work on that, but still we are lagging behind as compared to the other countries.
That's all from my side.
First of all, Divya, I would like to comment on your presentation skills. They were quite sorted and organized. And besides this, I am actually interested in one of the exports that you mentioned has registered a negative growth. The HS codes that you have
yes, that is 761100. That is aluminium reservoirs.
It has, okay. And there are certain products that have actually registered export growth between 50 to 100% and more than 100%. So could you just name like top 2 or top 3 products that have registered more than 100% export growth?
Just give me 1 second, ma'am.
And also
more
on the
than,
similar,
more
yeah.
than 50%. Are you asking for more than 50% in case of exports?
I'm actually asking both for the 50, between 50 to 100% and more than 100% on the both export lines and the import lines.
Okay, so for more than 100%, we have the HS code 850231, and that basically stands for electric generating sets, ma'am.
Okay, so and what about the import? Both, I mean, electric generating sets are both in the export and the imports.
Yes, ma'am.
In more than 100%, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so actually it's not a question, it's just a suggestion. If you could, sort of try to identify the key players in both the leading products, I mean, on the export and the import side, the leading players in the both the export and import. Why am I saying is because, you could further, I mean, at the end of the conclusion or the recommendation part, you could actually figure out if there are any key issues in the export side and the import side for the products that are between 50 to 100%. I'm not saying for 100% because they are already on the top notch. So it could, sort of try to change the export and import scenario of India. I mean, you could just make a recommendation on this.
Sure.
By identifying the key players on both the export and imports part. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, session chairs, for your valuable input. I would now request Ms. Millie McLeod from Hankook University, Seoul, to present her paper titled Robotic Workforces, Temporary Solution or the New Normal.
Thank you.
Just a second, we'll just share our screen and then you can start, ma'am.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Millie McLeod, and I'm an American business student studying at Hankook University in Seoul, South Korea. I'm sorry I couldn't join in person due to obvious reasons, but thank you for having me regardless. Today, I will be presenting my paper entitled Robotic Workforces, Temporary Solution or New Normal. Can we go to the next slide, please? And in this short study, we will focus primarily on 3 main topics: the impact of COVID-19 on the customer service industry, the past, present, and future implications of the presence of augmented reality and artificial intelligence and their roles in the service sectors. And finally, we will draw conclusions based on these observations. Next slide, please. To begin, we should first establish a few baseline characteristics regarding our overarching topic, the service industry. While personalized customer care remains a constant expectation, many factors tend to impact the ways in which service providers interact with consumers. A few of those main factors can be summed up as: number 1, the general ever-changing nature of customer preferences and expectations; number 2, the introduction of price alternatives; and number 3, the continuous advancement of technology. In short, all of these factors combine to characterize the service industry. Quick, clever solutions are required to stay on top. One thing can be guaranteed: when you expect people to give you their hard-earned money, they are always expecting top quality service. Consumers will rarely be empathetic and understanding of your inability to progress if you are not willing to offer those same outdated services at a discounted price. For these reasons, it is important for firms to stay alert and listen to their customer demands. And sometimes unprecedented events can take place that have the ability to completely disrupt the industry altogether, making matters all the more worse for companies trying to stay afloat. I believe we all know what I'm hinting at here. Yes, COVID-19 had a dramatic effect on the service industry, as almost all of modern society was forced to come to an abrupt halt. The very ways in which humans interacted and consumed were totally altered. But does that automatically mean that the demand for goods and services decreased relatively? Actually, no, it certainly does not. In fact, the demand for goods and services actually increased in a number of ways. Perhaps the Western toilet paper shortage rings a bell. But consumers were not the only ones impacted by COVID-19. The pandemic demanded a major call to action from companies participating in the service sector, and quick, flexible responses proved essential in their survival, with a few major challenges at hand. Next slide, please. First, as stated earlier, personalization in the service sector can be identified as almost a constant characteristic. No matter what or where or how, consumers of the 21st century have grown accustomed to personalized care. And do we really think that a pandemic will cause them to lower their standards? No, we do not. So this brings us to our first challenge. Companies would need to find a way to maintain a sense of personalization despite being farther from ever from their customers, at least in a physical sense. Secondly, in many industries, employees were transitioning to remote work when possible. Although this was sustainable for some industries, this sudden shift had potential to cause major inefficiency in production, therefore leading to a demand for employee alternatives. And lastly, and perhaps most predictably, most companies witnessed a drop in revenue as a result of the pandemic. In response, in order to stay afloat in these trying times, cutting costs where possible was the only chance at survival for most. Next slide, please. So I'm curious if any of these app functions look familiar to you. Here you are looking at examples of augmented reality with virtual makeup try-on applications and even an app that enables you to try on your clothing before purchasing it. As for artificial intelligence, a common example would be self-learning airline chatbots that offer 24/7 humanless service. Perhaps you've used one yourself, and prior to COVID-19, you might have encountered it and just thought, that's neat. But to be frank, before the pandemic, there was not much of a need for virtual makeup swatching. Sure, the feature was handy and convenient, and it perfectly aligned with the growth of e-commerce, but it could not quite be deemed as essential. Now tell me, wouldn't the existence of this feature take on a whole new meaning when your customers can't come to your brick and mortar locations anymore because there's a region-wide government-mandated lockdown? This is just one example of how these technologies have graduated from being perceived as merely a competitive advantage to actually being an essential solution in these unprecedented times. These technologies are no longer a bonus, they are commonplace or the new normal. In total, it seems as if all COVID-19 did was simply exacerbate the technological trends that were already underway. Next slide, please. What's more, these technologies do more than just provide personalized service to customers from the comfort of their own homes. As mentioned, AI chatbots are actually self-learning. This means that as they communicate and interact with customers, they actually learn more and more each time, making them highly sustainable and a long-term investment. Next slide, please. Yes. And with self-teaching 24/7 operating technology, you can guarantee costs will be cut. Take a look at these pictures. Which do you think would be cheaper to run? On the left is a traditional call center requiring dozens upon dozens of employees taking calls. On the right is a chatbot programmed to communicate with customers and solve common issues. Notice I do say common because certainly technology is not yet to the point where robots can truly solve all of our problems on their own, which is why a human employee base will always be in demand. Well, at least for the foreseeable future. So however, allowing a chatbot to firstly sift through requests and solve common or simple ones can enable a company to downsize significantly and increase efficiency. And what better time to make this jump than during a pandemic? Due to government regulations, continuing this form of work at the same scale was rendered impossible. And that's where AI chatbots came in to save the day and alleviate some of the demand. Another advantage is the case of solving some instances of employee redundancy. Having a stable constant as the foundation of an employee base can help to moderate sharp spikes in eras of high versus low unemployment and prevent impulsive hirings and subsequent firings. I know it seems as if so far we've been hyperfixating on the positives of AR and AI, so let's take a moment to address some of the downsides to these developments, because there definitely are some, because in many ways this technology is still rather new. Next slide, please.
Ma'am, your 6 minutes are up, so you have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Just reminding.
Thank you. Another advantage of these technologies that we haven't yet touched on is neutral service. Unlike humans, robots cannot become emotional and argue with customers. However, on the other hand, unlike humans, they are also unable to provide that sense of what we call the human touch. Consumers often seek a sense of humanity in the company that they engage with. And even if a robot can emulate human behavior closely, the small discrepancies can make the service appear almost uncanny in nature. This goes hand in hand with their inability to be flexible. They are unable to understand and solve unique scenarios like a human can, can, which is why the human workforce cannot be eliminated, at least with our current technological capacities. What's more, these technologies often require heavy upfront R&D costs. While maintaining a human workforce would require a regular income demand, developing these new technologies will require large sums of money all at once, though it could be considered a long-term investment. In these ways, it's clear to see that there are both obvious positives and negatives to adopting and integrating AR and AI into your business in the 21st century. And while the companies must weigh these factors to decide what's best for them, let's take a look at how consumers feel about these changes. Slide 9, please. A survey conducted concluded that approximately 70% of consumers are actually okay with the service provided by AI bots. Now, do these results mean that people prefer bots to humans? No, not necessarily, but perhaps they do prefer the decreased wait times and the neutral, consistent service they provide. Next slide. This leaves us with 30% being left unsatisfied. But the truth is, some people will always dislike change, and this opinion lies in the minority, so much so that companies could take it with a grain of salt when taking developmental decisions for their growth of future firms. Next, final slide, please. In conclusion, one thing remains true. Consumers want personalized care no matter what. That is something that firms can be certain of. The varying factors of how firms respond to and deal with these demands. While some businesses get a head start in technological development before COVID-19, in many ways, these technologies are no longer an option. From this point moving forward, firms should explore their investment into technological R&D as a legitimate strategy at achieving competitive advantage in their industries, because now that firms have implemented these technologies to cope with the changes brought on by the pandemic, they have become commonplace, and consumers will continue to expect this trend of convenience and innovation long after the pandemic is over. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I request the session chairs to ask their queries to the participant. Session chairs.
Of course, the use of AI is exciting, and we know that it can replicate the person's action. When we talk about automation, you know, the side, if you are looking from the customer's point of view, if you look from the producer's point of view or the service providers, right, it will eliminate few of the occupation, right, which entirely in the coming decade. And it is likely to have impact on all jobs to some degree. And there are certain areas where artificial intelligence cannot work, where actually the personal touch is required. So what is your say on that?
On the areas that AI cannot be implemented?
Yeah.
I believe most of the areas where AI is being implemented are the areas where there were discrepancies. There's plenty of industries that, you know, the expression, if it's not broken, don't fix it, kind of something like that. I think most of the industries that are currently trying to implement AI, it's because they actually need to increase efficiency. They're struggling. There's long wait times. Like, for example, in the presentation, we talked about call centers. There's extremely long wait times. Customers are unsatisfied, staff is overworked. So I believe these industries are where AI needs to be implemented first. So it actually is currently being done. And there's plenty of industries that, you know, and there's nothing wrong with maintaining a human workforce. I think most people would agree that that's better for unemployment. So I think there's several industries that could actually benefit and work hand in hand with AI to make happier people, happier customers, happier workforce. But there's some industries that just simply might not need it, at least not now.
And in your study, even like there are 30% people who are actually looking for the face-to-face interaction and not very comfortable using AI. That is what I'm just asking you, that this is the customer's point of view, right? Mm-hmm. And how it is going to impact the economy. See, when we, you know, introduce any such technology, it is going to have impact on the employment, right? If we just try and introduce AI everywhere. So don't you think there should be some certain suggestions wherein what are other areas where we can include or improve in terms of job creation? Because if we are going down on one side, there should be something which should be there to balance that.
Right? Definitely. Right. Yeah, and I do believe I believe tech jobs are becoming more and more popular. Before, maybe jobs were more tactical, more hands-on. But these days, a lot of people are studying engineering and things because even if we implement these technologies, we will need people to run these technologies and create these technologies. So I believe a lot of jobs in the future will start to become more technological in nature, maybe more than now. So I do think some new jobs will be able to be created to go hand in hand with the AI implementation, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And of course, in not all the countries, in some economies which are still developing, and there are people who don't even have access, who don't even are aware, who are not even able to access the services. So the limitation is there.
Yeah, it's
That's
going to
also
be
my point.
a long time until the whole world is ready.
Yeah.
Hi, Millie. So I have a question. Okay, like tell me a time, have you ever been stuck up in a situation where, you know, you really needed help, and at that time you really went to a chatbot to chat and, you know, get a solution over your problem? Or, I mean, just explain me a situation. Have you ever experienced this situation?
I personally, I use airlines because that's my most common experience with AI in
Okay.
general. Yeah, I have been helped by AI chatbot before, believe it or not, I have. I remember I had my flight schedule was changed and I needed a new itinerary. And when usually that would be very complicated, at least in the US, the wait lines are huge for airlines. It takes like 3 hours for them to call you back. So I was actually really impressed because I just messaged the chatbot and it sent me my new itinerary just on its own. It was really impressive. So I just thought, wow, that saved a lot of people a lot of time, the workers and myself.
Okay, so basically my point of asking the question was that the way you have explained that you know, AI has helped you in within seconds and you were quite impressed. I think that there lies a very big difference between how the AIs are developing in developed world and, you know, in developing countries. Why I ask this question? Because in India, like even I also use certain apps, and when I look for a solution at that time, I, instead of, you know, feel like instead of chatting with a chatbot, I really need a good human solution. So I think that this sort of demarcates a line. Either the AIs are actually being, you know, on a development stage, but are at a very different level in the developed world and in the developing world. I think there needs to be, you know, a bridge the gap so that all the AIs are on a same level, first of all. And besides that, I just wanted to know, like, what is exactly the scenario of AIs in your country? I mean, given the Korea is quite developed nation, so what exactly is the situation there? Because in India, I am sure you must be aware about the Uber service app, the cab app. So it I mean, recently certain experiences have happened, and instead of, you know, resorting to a chatbot solution, I was looking for a human experience. Until date, I could not just reach out to any of the humans for the, you know, resolution. This is my first question. And my second question is the personalized care thing that you mentioned is in the services industry particular. What exactly do you think is the status of the omni channel in this? Because I believe that on the, if you look from the demand and the supply side, on the supply side, actually the businesses are doing really well to, you know, increase the personalized experience of each and every consumer. But how far do you think has omni channel progressed in from the demand side? Are the customers really willing to, you know, opt for it, or is it still in the development stage?
Mhm. So as for South Korea, even more so than the United States, I believe they are more technologically advanced. I go to a restaurant and a robot serves me sometimes, which is
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. But I think one of the advantages of, as you were talking about bridging the gap, I think one of the important things is that Korea also had a learning curve, an implementation curve into adding this new technology. However, I think that once you get to that point where it's widespread, you're able to better balance plan B. So when I first encounter the AI, I know that if something goes wrong, I can talk to a human. I think, but that requires a lot of money. You know, it's whenever you're first developing it, it's kind of like one or the other. It can cost upwards $300,000 to implement an AI chatbot, a really good one. So how are you going to get an AI chatbot and a whole human workforce as you're, you know, just there just in case? So I think it's honestly just, it's a long process. It takes years of being frustrated with the bots. And then finally, whenever the capital is available, things can start to stabilize, something like that. And then to question, right. Question two, how to keep consumer demand, you asked?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we could keep it concise and short, because the 2 minutes have passed. So keep it concise. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So as for consumer demand, I find that the more convenience consumers will always want more. You give them, you show them, hey, you can do this at home, and they're going to say, what else can I do at home? So I think it is implementing these kind of technologies is almost a double-edged sword for companies, because once they show consumers that they can do it, they're going to expect more. But I guess it's good news, because they're always going to be eager to see what you're going to do next. They're always waiting for you to shock them.
That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Session Chef. Thank you, Millie. We will take a minute off and see what the sponsors have for us. पहले अच्छा शेयर पे डायरेक्टली जाओ अच्छा वही कर रहा हूँ ना इसको
Thank you, sponsors. I would now request Ms. Alice NK from St. Thomas College to present a paper titled Industry 4.0, Analysis of Human Skill and Role of Education System. Due to some technical glitch, I think she's not able to join. So I would now request Mr. Rohit Venugopal from Delhi School of Economics to present his paper titled A Study of Vulnerable Factors of Livelihood of Women Nurses.
Which one is it? This one.
Yeah.
Share the screen
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And make sure that your voice is audible when you're talking.
yeah. Just let me know if not audible.
We'll just shorten this up. Wait. Your
So warm good evening to all. You know, my first experience in front of a mic, so all apologies for that. So a very enlightening presentation on Korea, but let's come back to India for the time being, from robotics to humans. So as you can see from the slide, my topic is the study of vulnerable factors of livelihood of women nurses of case study of Kerala. I don't think this can be more evident and more perspicuous than anyone else to understand, you know, what objective it is. So let's just move on to the motivation. Why did I choose this topic? So, you know, we all know this fact that, you know, women are subjected to various kinds of restraints. They have a kind of vested interest from birth. In many communities, you know, women from childhood itself, they should not do this, should not do that. So most of the studies, they're centered around community grounds, whether, you know, comparing women across communities, for example, tribal women, the state of their being, etc., or women occupied in fisheries or anything else. So what I thought, why not just compare the standard of woman or livelihood of woman based on an occupation? And by occupation, I don't mean just restricting to agriculture, which has been something that most of studies have focused on, just sticking to agriculture, aquaculture, or there are many studies you can find on Google Scholar Semantic. So I just took a occupation that we all, especially Indians, are aware of, doctors, especially in Kerala, especially because, you know, you visit any hospital, you will find women nurses of Kerala, definitely. So that's one of the main reasons I took women nurses of Kerala to let's study their livelihood vulnerabilities. And this topic itself suits this theme of the MET conference. So the objective is simple: to study the vulnerable factors of women nurses across 3 institutions. So 3 kinds of institutions that cater to health services of India are private, government, and Kerala state medical colleges. So the third one is something that's new. Many might not be aware of, who are not Mallus. So it's a part of government itself, but you don't get all the kind of government benefits. You are temporarily employed in that Kerala state medical colleges. So a brief review of literature, as I said, the reason for choosing women nurses is something, you know, no one has chosen till date any woman targeting an occupation such as doctors or engineers. They have mainly restricted themselves to agriculture or very constructive thinking. So I just wanted to find a gap there, and I just thought, why not just go for doctors? And speaking about sustainable livelihood, the concept was quite popular from 1990s itself, but it was really restricted towards climate, you know, the climate change, how climate and human interact with each other, and how can humans cope up with climate. So this was pretty much specific to coastal areas, not only to Kerala or any Sri Lankan economies, but all around the globe. With rapidly changing climate, how can floodplains be protected? How can it sustain their livelihood? But in recent times, this framework has increased in its scope, and it has focused more on poverty. Now, when I say poverty, it's not just about poverty means, you know, kind of garibi. It's about how poverty manifests in reality rather than just in terms of money, how poverty exists within us, within our minds, how there's possibility of always remaining poor rather than poor financially. So that's the point of sustainable framework. And I use the same sustainable framework to understand the livelihood vulnerabilities of women, nurses of Kerala. So the methodology I use for this is I have gone through a primary study basically of by collecting a sample of 400 women nurses, and from them a structured questionnaire was filled, and based on that a vulnerability index was constructed. Now a vulnerability index is itself a byproduct of the sustainable livelihood framework in order to quantify what the results are, because sustainability itself is so subjective. For me, sustainability can be something else, for some you something else. For banking, sustainability means the depositor should keep on depositing, but for college it should be like students should keep on enrolling. So sustainability can mean different. So in order to quantify it, this vulnerability index was constructed. So moving forward, I will not waste time and bore you all. I will just quickly jump to the findings about. So coming into natural capital vulnerability, it's an index that I constructed personally for finding out how women nurses are specifically affected from natural disasters that occur in the state of Kerala. So 3 disasters are taken into consideration: floods, landslides, and earthquakes. Now earthquakes, I agree, those who are familiar with the geography of Kerala, earthquakes are less prone to Kerala, so they are weight less. So a weight of 75% is given to 50, 25%, and 25% to earthquake is given. So when you go across the findings, the first line, I'm ordering the vulnerable index values. So if you want to read the first line, it means that private married women were more vulnerable than medical married, and so on to government married. Now first line should be quite obvious, to be precise, because everyone agrees that married women are vulnerable first of all. Number 2, if you are in a government job, you will get retirement schemes and everything. So it's not a big deal. But the way more obvious the first fact looks, more intriguing the second. Why are government unmarried women becoming more vulnerable than private unmarried? So since I personally conducted the questionnaire, I had a chance to personally talk to at least 60 to 70 of them, and they give 2 reasons for the same. Number 1, though the government claims that they have coming up with various schemes for them, but many of the schemes are not reaching these women. That's the first claim that comes up as a reason for high vulnerability. Number 2, very surprising, many claim 75% of women claimed that government is especially targeting or coming up with schemes that are targeting married women. So they're not giving any privileges to the unmarried ones. So this is one of the main reasons why government unmarried come up at the first place. And most important, private players are also stepping up in a state which we call it's a government state. Kerala, it's heavily dominated by the government, and private players don't have much place there. But still, the nurses claim that private players do play a role there, and they are stepping up at the time of natural calamities by especially granting them leaves when required, and especially providing them benefits, monetary benefits to reconstructing, which goes unaccounted for, obviously. And third, this literally shows there's a consensus that married women are always vulnerable. It's like herds behavior. Everyone says it, we follow it, and the next generation will continue it. So it's not the case that married women generally are more vulnerable to unmarried ones. There is a possibility that unmarried can be more vulnerable. And I would argue, if you keep on just focusing on the married ones for next 30 to 40 years, it might become the case that unmarried become more vulnerable. So the next index that I constructed was a financial vulnerability index. Now, this index basically covers the average debt holdings that specifically women nurses hold. Now, this index is of specific importance for Kerala, because in Kerala, basically, women prefer to take their education abroad, like countries like Gulf countries specific. Yeah, Gulf countries to be specific, or Ukraine, which became quite famous for the time being. And surprisingly, also not surprising, quite obvious, nothing new here, because government nurses were more vulnerable than the private counterparts, and the same line of reasoning holds that government benefits do not reach them at the required time. So the physical capital vulnerability index, which again, it's kind of natural capital vulnerability index only, but the only difference is here the loss is attributed from road accidents, from theft, robbery, and so these two. So road accidents are two kinds of from personal vehicle and public transport. So again, surprising results have found that private nurses who are married, they are less vulnerable than to the government counterparts, and they are even less vulnerable to the medical counterparts. And that's quite surprising when you think that private is a kind of demon which we don't want to enter, and everyone wants to go run ahead in the government. That's particularly because I would argue the private hospitals pay you more than government, and that allows them to earn a better standard of living and better safety measures. So my conclusion will be, it's across institutions. You cannot just, even if you say that married are more vulnerable to unmarried, like, so when you take into account certain factors like institution, for in this example, private, government, medical, those things need not hold true, and further work can be done on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Session chairs, can we have your valuable inputs? Session chairs.
I'm sorry, I did not get the name of the presenter. So, first of all, I am just, have you looked at the sustainable livelihood index which is there, or you have just built upon your own index based on your own literature, the literature that you have reviewed?
No, ma'am. So I went through Sustainable Livelihood Index. It was earlier a IPCC framework because it was more focused on climate-oriented approaches. And further, by the end of 2010 onwards, it became more focused towards human actions. So, it became IPCC, that is Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change plus Sustainable Livelihood. It's a combined framework together. So both are combined from a new kind of index. And that is something that I have used here. I just added a new weights to it to make it more realistic. That's the only difference.
Okay. What made you bring in the comparison of married and non-married nurses, right? This is what women nurses?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What made you bring in this comparison?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking you.
Yes, ma'am. So
why have you done this comparison? What do you think? What was the need?
So, ma'am, basically, since I am from Kerala, so I have seen this difference. Around me, married people have a better lifestyle. Compared to the unmarried ones, they are more debt owed. They have more liabilities, and when people say married are more vulnerable, they have poor life and something like that. So that made me wonder: is it really the case? And that is something that that led me to this kind of study.
So what has come out in your study? Are unmarried women more vulnerable or the married ones?
So the conclusion that I drew from the study is you cannot generalize that married women are always kind of more vulnerable to the unmarried ones.
Now here you are talking about the vulnerability index,
right?
The 3 index that you have taken. Okay. And like, I'm still not able to figure out these 3 index, and because when you were talking about the natural calamity, you have been discussing about the government, initiatives that are taken in favor of married and not in favor of, if I'm not wrong, just correct me. So what can you elaborate on that? Because that is still confusing. When what it has to do with the natural calamities like floods and earthquakes.
Yeah. So, ma'am, since Kerala is a place for frequent floods and landslides, so government specifically has released 3-4 schemes. Sorry, I can't recall those schemes for the time being. They have specifically released 3-4 schemes helping the unmarried married ones because they have children. So when you have children and the married couple gets the benefit of house reconstruction, and as well as they make their own quarters. But when you're unmarried, you don't have these children and anything, and they get neglected. So that's why I was that's why they claim that government is not paying special attention, special privileges to them.
So having children is the criteria, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And regarding leaves also, you have been mentioning.
Sorry?
You have been mentioning about leaves also. So certain benefits to married women, they get leave easily.
Yeah.
So why? Like, what made you say that? And from where have you researched this?
So unfortunately, I haven't revealed the special benefits schemes I should have, but the slides were limited. So sorry for that.
Special benefit scheme for
Married woman.
okay.
So I couldn't display it on the slides because the number of slides were limited. So sorry for that. And
No, no, that's okay.
I'm sorry, I do not have a question. I missed your session due to some technical glitch. So all the best.
thank you.
Thank you, session chairs. Thank you, Rohit. We'll now move on to the next presentation.
I would like to request Mr. Divit Malik from Amity School of Economics to present his paper titled Extent of Financial Inclusion Among Migrants in Delhi NCR.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Divit Malik, and I'm going to present on extent of financial inclusion among migrants in Delhi NCR. So, firstly, starting with the topic, usually we consider financial inclusion as a very producer-driven or a supply-driven approach. So we have this concept in our mind that you open more banks, more ATMs, and more proximity to the end user, and you end up doing financial inclusion. But that's one way of looking at the problem. So I have decided, I have come out with a research gap wherein I have figured out the factors which behaviorally impact people from getting financially included. So firstly is in behavioral economics, we study the choice architecture of the problem. So since I'll be addressing the issue related to migrants, so this is the choice architecture which we came up with, which dealt with the default biases, decision paralysis, status quo bias, limited attention, and availability bias. So any migrant who happens to access the financial services or the financial infrastructure of the country, or the locality wherein he lives in, he particularly goes through these 5 biases in behavioral economics. Now, the other thing is technology and policy drive a revolution in access. So since 2011, there has been a dramatic increase in financially including people. So we had since 2011, 1.2 billion people have been opened a bank accounts. But the problem with these bank accounts is that once you open them, people don't use them. So the problem of use, even though you've given them access, has started coming up. So which translates to the fact that despite increased access, use remains low. And the last piece is in the introduction part is the science of human behavior. Till now, we always thought that, if you open banks, if you open branches, if we open bank accounts for people in the lower strata, or particularly the migrants, they would be financially included. But it has been shown with the data, which I'll tell you in my analysis, that that's not happening. What we are doing is that we are creating infrastructure, but we are still creating barriers to which a migrant has to go through to access that infrastructure. Until the time we don't analyze the factors which are acting as a barriers for that migrant to access the financial infrastructure, financial inclusion still remains a problem. So this is how a consumer behavior happens when financial inclusion comes to picture. One is you use financial services for consumer health, and the financial services provider gives financial services to give you a financial buffer, so that when you are in a dire need, you have the access to those services. So this infographic, which is right in front of you, gives you a behavioral approach. It shows that how do people think when they're making financial decisions. So the objective of the study was to investigate the major factors affecting access to financial services, to find the level of awareness towards various fintech services. In my data and in my and in the introduction which I've done, one thing which has come across is that fintech is making use of financial services very easy. So even though you give a bank account to a migrant, it is useless to that person because he's not able to use it. But fintech is drastically solving that problem, which I'll show you in my findings. And the other is to study the association between financial literacy and the extent of financial inclusion. So Daniel Kahneman, when he was doing his behavioral economics research, he came up with the questionnaire of financial inclusion. I've modified it according to the according to something which a migrant would go through, questions which he would go through. And we have tried to find out that, you know, how his financial ability, his ability to comprehend his financial understanding is making him choose those decisions. So the method has been to do primary data collection. I did a survey of 400 migrants in Delhi NCR. Most of these migrants came from have their native regions in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and few of them were from Punjab. And their work profile ranges from being a maid or a domestic help to being a driver or a peon or a PA in an office. And as we will find with the data, we'll have interesting analysis there. And I've done principal component analysis here on SPSs. So first, to understand the first objective is the factors affecting access to financial services. As you can see through PCA, you come out with 4 components which are significant and which affect variation in barriers to financial services. So if you take the first component, factor 8, factor 9, and factor 5, all these values are above 0.5. So in factor analysis, any value above absolute in absolute terms, if it's greater than 0.5, that rotational loading has a lot of impact on your variation. So if you see FA8, FA9, and FA5, so it according to the variables and the questionnaire which I have put in, which basically says that a migrant now, his ability to access financial services now is because of lack of credit history, because because the banks are not willing to provide him with credit services. And the other thing is that he's not able to communicate with his relationship manager or the person who's there at the branch. So now what you could, from the questionnaire, if you would go, usually we would say that any migrant who stays in the nearby area or any migrant who wants to access financial services, for them, problem would be proximity, the ability to go to a bank and use that service. But that is no longer the problem causing variation. That is because we've opened enough banks and enough ATMs and enough physical financial infrastructure in this country. So now the issue for a migrant is particularly, which is causing 25% variation, is credit services. There's no credit history, and there is a fear that, you know, the relationship manager who's sitting at the branch might not be able to communicate, or the behavior might be a little off because I'm a migrant. Second component, which in second component, the FA3 and FA2 rotational loadings indicate that that the hesitancy to interact with the bank branch and the ability to converse with the bank branch in their own language is affecting. So after having no credit history and having no access to credit services, this is the other component which is significantly impacting, or which, let's say 20% of the variation is being caused by these two factors, these two rotational loadings. And then in the third component, we have FS7 and FF4. FS7 says that I'm not able to provide documents for my KYC. And FF4 tells us that the transaction costs of using bank branch are high. So now if you see, KYC used to be a problem, right? You know, when we think about this, KYC and proximity was the major problems, but they're not. They've slowly they've come down. KYC with the advent of Aadhaar and all, and with the ability to authenticate your verification through OTP or through digital means, KYC does not remain a problem anymore. And the last component which causes 15% variation is our factors with rotational loadings, FA1 and FA6, which is now proximity and ability to receive direct benefit transfer schemes from the government. So now this has been proved through the PCA model that proximity no longer is a problem to a migrant. It is all these behavioral factors which are there, that, you know, there is hesitancy in talking to the branch staff, or there is a language barrier. These factors are coming up. Then the other question is to understand the level of association between financial literacy and extent of financial inclusion. Yeah. So there, here also we had three components which came out to be significant, and they were combined in a combined way, causing 65% of variation. And if you see if you go through the questionnaires, you will find that even a migrant now wants to save for his pension, which has been shown through the rotational factor loadings here. And it is not because that he has enough money; it is because there is access because of fintech. And once we go to the next slide, I will show you that because of fintech, the payment bank accounts which have come up in the country, they are causing a significant revolution. So if you go through the fintech questions, which are through the fintech PCA, you will realize that even a migrant wants to invest in the markets. You know, the primary source of paying people or doing financial transactions is no longer a wallet transaction or a digital wallet. It has changed. It has shifted to a payment bank account, because he finds it convenient to have a payment bank account in his hand so that he can access it. He no longer wants to go to a branch and face the regular hustle which is there. Now, the conclusion here is that we have been looking at the financial inclusion problem from a long lens now, because we've pretty much solved the problem of putting up branches in place. So the early hurdle which still remains till now is a low engagement with formal financial product. So that can be solved if we look at the problem through a behavioral lens. If we can do a survey or a research across India or any country which is suffering through financial inclusion, we will realize that it is the behavioral factors which are acting as a barrier for people to using financial services or to getting financially included. It is no longer the physical infrastructure which we as a country lacked 10 years back is a problem. So the analysis and all this has been proved through the PCA factor analysis which I have done. And this is another model which is an infographic which shows that there are numerous opportunities for behavioral improvements which can be done only if we do it through a behavioral lens. So that is what my presentation is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Session chairs, if you can give your valuable inputs, Chair.
So you have studied the extent of financial inclusion among migrants in Delhi NCR, Divit, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a few questions. So you said that your sample size is 400.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what are the different categories of different migrants, occupation categories of migrants you have collected the data? Or let me ask you which tool you have used to collect. You said you have used primary data. So how did you collect that?
This was a field survey thing, and I was punching their data on the Google form while I was talking to them. And they were in demographic information. They were giving me answers to questions like what caste do they come from, which native region do they come from, what work have they been employed in, and how many children do they have, how many bank accounts do they have.
Okay. So you have that demographic information with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So what are the different categories of occupation from people?
Their work was ranging from being a domestic help to a driver to a peon in an office or to being an office boy. This was the diversity of their job profile.
Okay, and what was the education level in general?
It was middle level. Like most of them hadn't gone to college. They had done their metric or 12th. And people who had gone to college, they had done their BA or something like that. And they were predominantly, that particular sample space was involved in an office job, as in they were an office boy.
So basically the study is behavioral limitation that is faced by migrants in Delhi NCR.
Yes.
Using their bank account. Because when we talk about financial inclusion, it is not just limited to having a bank account and be able to use it. And just let me just bring in, because we are talking about migrants, we are talking about people who move from Bihar, UP, Jharkhand to places like Delhi and Gurgaon for job opportunities, for better standard of living. The main purpose, what is the main objective of them? Did you ask them what was the main objective, why they have moved?
Your voice was breaking. Can you come again?
Did you ask them what was the reason why they have migrated?
No, ma'am. I was asking them questions on what
related to the bank.
Yeah,
okay. These people, they come here so that they can earn money and they can send back money to their family in their villages. And the major problem that is being faced by migrants nowadays, which is actually being resolved slowly with this new technologies coming up, is basically of remittances to their
Yes,
native place.
yes, I was coming to that. You were talking about remittances, and
Yeah.
IIM Ahmedabad has done
And
that.
this is the behavioral approach that you're talking about, and it is financial inclusion includes much more than what is being discussed here.
Financial inclusion. If you look at the definition, financial inclusion basically.
Did you check about, like, have they ever applied for a loan, credit? How
Yes,
easy it
yes,
was?
I've asked I've asked those questions. They were there in extent of financial inclusion questions, the FI10 variables.
Okay.
And ma'am, I did a survey on fintech because my understanding was in a lot of like
So
remittances.
fintech, as in how easily they are able to use the apps on the mobile.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, the problem is
So
the problem is low engagement with financial services. So fintech solves that.
So all of them, be it construction worker, be it housemaid, they were all aware and using the.
Yes, ma'am. They were all they're all aware. Yes, ma'am. They're all
Or
aware.
did you come across some people who were not even aware of it?
Ma'am, there were, and they have accordingly they have selected. They've conveyed.
What was the mode of their salary?
That question was also asked in the demographic, and particularly from what I found was that people who were salaried and who were being paid through digital means were more aware. They were more aware and they knew about, and particularly people who were working as office boys or in the offices like a P or a EA, and they were also knew about investing, and as in they had an idea that this is a much better option to do.
Did you make any comparison of people, these migrants who are employed in the organized and unorganized sector?
No, ma'am, that I will have to do.
So that comparison can be done.
Yes, ma'am.
But then again, people who are in an unorganized sector, they get cash as their salaries.
So I would have to sort of code that on Excel or SPSS and then do, but that data is available. That data is available in the demographic.
So this is basically the behavioral aspect of these migrants, how comfortable they are, not the financial inclusion per se. That's it from my side.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am in complete agreement with Ms. Rimple, but at the same time, I really want to add something. You have mentioned like there's a problem of too much of supply infrastructure, like digital infrastructure and the banking infrastructure. But don't you think that this is actually a two-way problem? Not only that needs to be assessed from the side of the migrant laborers, but also on the side of the banks, because sometimes the grassroots level, the banks who are working at the grassroots level, they sometimes tend to, hesitate also in just providing a last milestone to the migrant labor. Number one thing. Number two thing is also about the financial literacy, that I believe that it's first of all, it's about the literacy, and then it comes about the financial literacy, because most of the migrant laborers might be aware of using these Paytm investment and all, but they are also prone to most of the bank frauds as well. So besides that, financial literacy needs to be taken into account. And as you have assessed for the Delhi region, I guess you should assess it for the Mumbai and the Bangalore region also, because the migrant laborers move mostly to the metropolitan areas.
Yes.
So study needs to be, to give it a complete shape and everything. I believe that you really need to it's the data that would be suffice. You should actually, look at the policy side also of this, that exactly what is the problem, because if even the fintech thing, this is something which is an emerging landscape and it's not even at its saturation stage. So if you talk about the fintech is something, I mean, it also includes the emerging blockchain and the cryptocurrency part, and that is something I think most of us who are present here might be lacking, some basic knowledge about that. So when you are speaking about the migrant labor, fintech is something he's actually more far off from. He needs to be firstly made financially literate. And as Ms. Rimple also said, that most of them, they are using Paytms and everything, but still they prefer cash somewhat. And I think if you really need to check, you can go on the RBI website also. because they tend to, track all this circulation of the cash and the circulation of the digital apps which are available and which are actually circulating. So to give it a complete shape, your analysis is good, I think, to what extent I could gather, but to give it a complete shape, you really need to, look it from another angle as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, session chairs. Thank you, Divit.
I would now request Ms. Dikshita Jakhar from Amity School of Economics to present her paper titled Challenges and Opportunities for the Livelihood of Artisans of Haryana, with special reference to potters.
Should I start? Is the mic on? Okay. A field of clay touched by the genius of man becomes a castle. Good evening, everyone. I am Dikshika, a PhD scholar at MIT School of Economics. So the title of my paper is The Challenges and Opportunities for the Livelihood of Artisans of Haryana, with a special reference to potters. There are about 7 million artisans in India. Potters constitutes around 40 lakh among them. The pottery making business in India is a beautiful example of the journey covered by the artisan from the mud to money. Pottery is an age-old handicraft in India. Each of potter considered pottery as a passion, then a profession. They are deeply invested in this art form, but this profession, unfortunately, this profession does not allow them to earn the decent standard of living. So this section of the society becomes relevant to be studied. So these are the objective. First objective of my study is to highlight the main problems being faced by the potters. Second is to evaluate the prospects or the opportunities of the pottery industry. Third is to provide the various suggestions for the policy making and the strategy analysis for the development of the pottery industry in the competitive market. So I have used primary as well as secondary data. The primary data is collected from the local artisans of the pottery industry of Rohtak and Jhajjar district through the personal interview. So the data is collected from the 81 individuals which are interviewed about the market demand, problems, income, etc. The secondary data has been collected from the books, the case studies, various news reports, and the annual reports of MSMEs. So these are some of the papers which I have reviewed. So after reviewing the paper and having a personal interview, the personal discussion with the pottery, the main findings are, these are some of the problems that are being faced by the artisans of the pottery industry. First is the problem of raw material. So most of the respondents in the interview, they feel like that there is an irregular supply of the raw material that affects their quality and the quantity of the output. So, and moreover, they face a high cost of the raw material due to the intervention of the middlemen. Second is the paucity of the working capital. They do not have an adequate working capital, due to which they feel that they are not that much motivated to diversify their production. Third is the lack of the credit facilities. There is lack of the credit facilities in these particular districts. Artisans do not get good credit from the banks because they do not have their own personal land or the property, due to which the banks also hesitate to provide the loan to them because they can't keep land or the property as the collateral. So the family, the friends, the money lenders, they are only the source of finance for them. Fourth is the lack of the encouragement. The government is doing for the handicraft industry, but still the pottery is at the stagnant. It is neglected by the government. Much work is not done in this industry. Next is a stiff competition from the other markets. As we all know about the Chinese products, we are more attracted to the Chinese products rather than ceramic products. So nowadays they are facing a challenge, stiff challenge from the Chinese industry. And moreover, the Chinese products, the cost of the production is less, so the price is also less, and so the people demand more for the people are moving towards the Chinese products. Next is the absence of the market facilities. So the porters do not get they do not get a market for their products. Most of their output is unsold. So there is no proper supply chain. There's no proper market for their products. Next is the obsolete technology. They are still using the old technology. Sitting on most of the time they keep sitting on these wheels. That affects their physical health also. So there is no upgraded technology in this sector. Next is lack of research and development. So to increase the output or to diversify the output, the research and the development efforts has to be done. So this industry still lacks that. Next is the prospects of the pottery industry. So not only the limitations, it have social significance also. First is the generating income. So the pottery industry, it provides employment to the number of the people, hence they help in the upliftment of the potters. Second is the eco-friendly product. As we all know, the demand for the eco-friendly product is rising day by day. The people prefer to use more of the eco-friendly products. Next is the employment opportunities. So nowadays, so in the pottery industry, most of the technology that is used is a labor intensive. So it helps in generation of the employment in the particular region. Last is the entrepreneurship in the state. So the availability of the resources in the state, they help in the, they have a huge potential for the entrepreneurship. So that can also help in the development and the growth of the particular region. So these were the prospects of the pottery industry. So the present study shows that pottery industry charm is being faded away due to the problems that are being highlighted in the study. So in spite of the limitation, pottery industry has a social significance too. So this industry is so this industry requires the attention of the researcher, planners, and the concerned authority. So these are some of the policy initiatives that can help in the future development. First is the credit facilities. So the proper credit facility should be provided by the government or the other concerned authorities to the porters, so that they do not face the problem of the finance. The second is the supply of raw material. So the government should provide the raw material to the porters at a subsidized rate, so that they are not deployed by the middlemen. So they should provide the raw material at the subsidized rate to the porters. Next is the training facility. The proper workshop or the training institutes can be set up so that they can enhance their skills. The next is there's an immediate need for organization of the cooperative societies, so that they can help in the procurement of the raw material, the finance, the technology upgradation, etc. And employment, the government should also ensure the employment opportunities of the artisans during the off season, because during the off season they are not earning anything. So the government should help them in providing with the other initiatives during that time. So this industry has a high potential. We all must create and spread awareness about the importance of pottery industry. A suitable and time-oriented action to the pottery industry can turn into a gainful occupation to large number of people. So these artisans should get the recognition, and the art should be respected. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Session chairs, if we could have your valuable inputs.
Yeah, so actually, okay, first of all, what is the name of the presenter?
Dikshika.
Okay, Dikshita, this is a very good concept that you have touched in particular, because I, at my personal level, is actually doing a lot of research on this pottery thing. So there are a few submissions that I want to make for your study.
Sure.
Firstly, your study is, and don't get me wrong, it is a little bit polarized. Why? Because you have just touched upon the Haryana state, right?
Yes, ma'am.
There are other states in this that needs to be taken into consideration to make an overall, picture of what exactly is the scenario of pottery industry in India. Besides that, you have touched upon only the rural people, the lower income group. However, there is an urban income group, which are, upper middle class or the rich, who are pursuing this it as an art form. And I don't know if you have ever explored on social media, but there are n number of potters that you could, just point them out, and they are actually making a business out of it, and they are actually doing pretty well in this. So I think you really need to broaden the landscape of your study to assess both the rural and the urban people. Urban as in when I say the lower income group and the higher income group. Okay. Then there are obviously certain challenges that exist in this because pottery industry does not have it has a very limited export market. So it really needs to be brought out. It needs a platform to showcase the art, the make the works of the artisans. Besides that, China, Italy, Germany, they are actually leading in this pottery business, and India is, I think, on 4th or 5th number. So you can actually, visit the websites or actually do a lot of research, like what is exactly the best practices that are adopted by these countries and where India is lacking. Because your recommendations part, the conclusion part of your study could be actually be strengthened further on this. And when you also speak about the credit facilities, yes, I understand the credit facility part. Actually, the credit availability supply chain parts need to be defined, particularly for the pottery industry. I think because it is different for if you speak about some other industry, might be that they might have a very well defined scope of, credit availability to the lower income group or the people who are involved in this sort of industry. So the credit facility part needs to be well researched upon, and that how it could be defined. And also the lower income group and the urban income, higher income group could actually be bridged upon to, even the lower income group could work as an ancillary units for the higher income group. I'm not just talking about the individual level, it's also at the business level, because there are actually established businesses in India who are actually making a lot out of pottery, and they are actually making it a business, but at the same time they are also teaching it in the art form. So these are my submissions for your study, but this is a very different concept that you have touched upon, and it is still, it does not have a mainstream, or I would say it's still not on the spotlight of the government. So that's all from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, in addition to Shivani, because since it is just limited to the potters in Haryana region, specific places. So, and we have talked about that there is a lack of technology information that is there. So maybe to start with, yes, this pottery business is taking place at a higher level, but to help these people who are at the lower level and who are the low income group, who are actually, have to work hard in order to earn their living, even in the similar business that in which people are making money. So how to bring technology to them, how to, make them more aware about how to, get their product to the market, and where people would demand, and showing the benefits of using the pottery, which is actually more eco-friendly and healthy than other Chinese products you were talking about. That is from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, session chairs. I would now request Ms. Ashwini Ajay from Amity School of Economics to please present her paper on reproduction of handlooms and handicrafts, a case study of Kerala.
Don't worry. Just let me finish it. Just let me finish it.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am Ashwini Achi. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ashwini Ajay. I will be presenting on the topic reproduction of handloom and handicraft, a study of Kerala. India's traditional wisdom, cultural spirit is manifested in the dispersed and inorganized handloom and handicraft sector. It's not just that it is handloom and handicraft sector are the sources of income for the artisan, but also a form of art through which India's culture is exhibited. The states, Indian states like Punjab and Madhya Pradesh have this pulkar and chanderi as their handloom products. So my research will be based on Kerala, where the arts, craft and rich saga of textile affluence of Kerala is a profit that its culture and heritage is affluent with the traditional handloom and handicraft. Yeah, I thought. The arts, craft, and rich saga of textile affluence of Kerala is a proof that its cultural and heritage is affluent with the traditional handloom and handicraft industry. For example, the Nettur Petti, coir works, wood cravings are the example of handicraft products, and Balampuram sari and Kasav is the example of handloom products. So these are my objectives of the study. Now moving to the research methodology, I have taken secondary data for my research from the sources like Kerala's tourism site and government website, and I have used MS Excel and Gretel as my primary software for this analysis. Now moving to my data analysis and findings. From the year 2012 to 2019, handloom and handicraft was going through ups and downs. From my research, I go to find that the women employees are more in this field. And Kerala's export partners, as you see, is USA, EU, and China, UAE, Bangladesh, etc. And from the graph, it is like handloom. It has like minimum export growth throughout the year 2015 to 2018-19, and the overall export is increasing, but it is increasing at a minimal rate. And based on the findings, I was able to determine that handloom and handicraft sector majorly comprises of female workers. And I believe that this sector will benefit greatly with technological upgradation and proper branding for better marketability. To conclude, I would just like to say that handloom and handicraft sector showcases our cultural wealth. And I believe instead of bringing new policies, it would be better if the current policies are implemented a better way that does make more effective and efficient. Due to the declining status of the sector and the participation of younger generation should be encouraged. This will lead to the modernization of the sector, which will bring out new innovation idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwini. Session chairs, can we have your valuable inputs? I will request the session chairs to keep the questions short and precise due to the shortage in time. Thank you. Session chairs, over to you.
Ashwini, I think you really need to, I would say you really need to, provide more clarity on what exactly is your study all about. Because whatever handicrafts and handloom thing that you have touched upon, I think it is something which is already available in the database. I mean, if you even just do a random Google search also. So rather you could just, I mean, just, you could focus on the technical challenges that this handicrafts and handloom industry is facing, because in India anyway, the textile industry as a whole has a margin of just 2 to 3% of profits, or a little, maybe let's say till 5%. So I think if you really need to what you are, first of all, what you are trying to say needs to be clear, but at the same time you could just focus on, if you like, how to tap on the business opportunities, and what exactly should be your recommendations in the, I mean, how do you see the handloom and the handicraft sector? That's all from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. I just included the challenges, but I will keep the suggestion in mind. I will work on it, ma'am.
When you say reproduction of handicraft and handlooms, a case study of Kerala, and you have been specifying specific, types which are specific to the culture, and then you say that there should be. Don't you think that is already being done, or people are already doing that? Those cultural, and these handicraft things are actually coming up. If you look at the from the global point of view, they are already there. What do you think? Do you see them as a dying occupation, or I think it is flourishing?
No, ma'am, it's not like a dying occupation. It's just that it goes through the ups and downs, and it still has demand in global market. So do in India market even. So
Okay.
I want to emphasize that through technological upgradation, or even more with specific policies, we can like make it more sustainable, or even.
So you can specify this in your study, no? And you can make your objectives more to the point in that case.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite Ms. Yukti Gambhir from Amity School of Economics to present her paper on future of fast food industry in India, the rise of cloud kitchens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yukti, and I'm going to present my paper on future of fast food industry in India, the rise of cloud kitchens or dark kitchens. So, having a quick introduction to my topic, as you all know, most of you must be familiar with the concept of cloud kitchens or dark kitchens. So, in the past decade, the shift in consumption patterns of Indians were not only seen technologically, but also from the point of view of food patterns. Urbanization and globalization have been the key factors which contributed to this increased consumption of processed food. And the word cloud kitchen basically gained momentum recently in the past few years. So basically, a cloud kitchen is a takeaway or a delivery outlet that does not provide a dine-in facility. In these outlets, only production of food happens. For example, Yummis, Box 8, Tiffin, Fresh Menu, and many more. So in an intense competitive market, cloud kitchens are the ultimate need of time. And as it is, India's food delivery market is growing and is valued at $15 billion. Until a decade ago, these segments were unheard of, and their popularity was facilitated in large part by the growth of internet and smartphones. Talking about my objectives, the objectives of my research is to study the emergence of the dark kitchens in India, and to conduct analysis of them in terms of customer acquisition and its competitors, and to study the impact of cloud kitchens on the overall growth of food industry in India. About my research methodology, I have collected data from 2014 to 2021 and conducted time series analysis along with comparative analysis of profits.
talking about my data analysis in brief, the bar diagram here shows the percentage composition of various platforms like social media, display marketing, restaurants, and so on. And the figure shows the breakup among all the different formats. And the indicator seems to suggest that the future of food services will be sustained by the delivery segments due to COVID-19 virus. This will fundamentally shift the control over the service experience from towards the online aggregator apps. About my findings, the key to success of any restaurant chain is marketing and advertising, and the future sees 50 million online customers of cloud kitchens in the near future. And as per the research, a small business earns 70% of their revenue from repeat customers. Online presence of cloud kitchens have made them highly interactive. And on concluding my research, the green orientation of cloud kitchens will have a competitive market advantage and also contribute to the sustainability agenda by reducing added environmental impact. And notwithstanding the risks involved, the present market conditions are favorable for the growth of cloud kitchens with more than 200 million online shoppers in 2021. India is stated to increase further. The vast amounts of unit level of data collected were aggregator apps which allowed them to leverage on technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data mining for targeted marketing, advertising, and optimization, as well as horizontal integration of hyperlocal segments. Thank you.
Thank you, Yukti. We will have the session chairs for their inputs. Session chairs, over to you.
So since you've been talking about the future of fast food industry, so what are your implications for fast food industry here?
Yes, ma'am.
The topic says the future of fast food industry. So we have been talking about the cloud kitchen, but what are the implications for fast food industry here in your study?
Basically, there is a shift from dine-in to delivery apps, and cloud kitchens has been one to come up. And in the recent years, these have been the ones delivering food all over across India through delivery apps. And mostly the food delivered is fast food, and hence cloud kitchens would be the future of fast food industry.
So there's a data that says that mostly the food which is being delivered is a fast food. So there is established study to that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And what do you mean by green orientation of cloud kitchen?
Ma'am, green orientation basically is the shift from restaurant to delivery, which basically helps in decreasing the expensive over the time and saving electricity, because in the and delivery kitchen there is less resources as compared to the dine-in restaurants. So the green efficiency would definitely mean the decrease in expensive over the years.
Maybe using the organic, eco-friendly products in delivery, right?
Yes,
maybe those could be included. All right, that's
yes.
it from myself.
Thank you.
Firstly, I would say that cloud kitchen concept and your PPT is quite, well organized and sorted. And again, your presentation skills were quite good enough.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Now, my question is that like fast food industry is, let's say cloud kitchen is a part of industry 4.0, right? So how do you think it is keeping pace with sustainability now, given it is an emerging agenda, and given also the increasing consciousness towards organic and non-organic foods and all?
Ma'am, there would be the environmental impact, in which we could say that the waste collection or the garbage collection would be less, and also the food wastage. Like food wastage would be the most important factor, which would be reduced because of all the resources that have been used.
Okay, so yeah, but do you think this is all about delivery? So the standards needs to be upgraded according to the sustainability factor. Like till date, we get things in, plastic wraps and all. So don't you think that it will need evolution to keep up with the pace of sustainability?
for them to survive, it would be very difficult.
I think I lost you. Could you just repeat?
So, ma'am, in the coming years, if they do not be in pace with the environmental friendly methods, they won't be able to survive for more than 4 to 5 years.
Okay. And besides this, have you, anything have you researched on the blockchain part, like how, how Cloud Kitchen is now transforming towards the blockchain thing, how they are including this concept? Have you researched anything on this? Because cloud is something, it's like, it's becoming a technology of the past again, and blockchain is going to be the future. Even I am not aware much about it, but still I'm asking, have you researched anything on this?
Ma'am, in the past 2 years, in the COVID era, the blockchain haven't really taken over. But in the future, yes, the cloud kitchens might go into the blockchain area, but detailed research has to be done in order to check the connectivity of cloud kitchens and blockchains.
Yeah, you can actually work on that. So.
Definitely. Yes. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite Ms. Kriti Bhatnagar from Amity School of Economics to present her paper on FDI in IT sector and economic growth of India.
Hi, good evening to all present here. So I've done my research on FDI in IT sector and economic growth of India. So to say, FDI is an important monetary source for India's economic development, and economic liberalization started in India in the wake of the 1991 crisis. And since then, FDI has steadily increased in the country. India today is a part of top 100 club on ease of doing businesses, and globally ranks #1 in the Greenfield FDI ranking. Now, coming to information technology in India, so it is a very vast industry which comprises information technology services and consulting and outsourcing services. So the IT industry accounted for 8% of the India's GDP in 2020. So in the contemporary evolved economy, India is the largest exporter of IT. It exports dominate the Indian IT industry and constitute about 79% of the industry's total revenue. However, the domestic market is also significant with robust revenue growth. So the industry's share of total Indian exports has steadily increased over the years. So coming to my paper, so my paper investigates the relationship between investments in the information and technology and information, communication and technology and foreign direct investment with reference to its impact on economic growth of India. So ICT is a necessary factor to develop a country's productive capacity in all sectors of the economy. It links a country with a global economy and ensures competitiveness. Unlike in developed countries where there is already established ICT, and so it attracts FDI capacity. But whereas in developing countries like India, ICT capacity must be built by attracting FDI. So across the world, developing countries are seeking to improve their ICT investments and benefit from anticipated increase in economic activity, and a causal between the two is often tacitly assumed. So now coming to my objectives. So India has become one of the most favored destinations for sourcing software and ICT enabled services. And India's strengths include highly skilled, abundant labor pool and market driven education system, labor cost advantages, and friendly government policies for IT exports. Therefore, the objectives of this paper are to investigate first to see if the data supports a causal relationship between ICT, using investment in telecommunications as a proxy, and FDI in a developing country like India. And second, to explore in the Indian context if ICT and FDI benefit economic growth measured as output growth.
So the issue in the paper is analyzed during time series analysis, tools of co-integration and error correction models. So if non-stationary time series variables are not co-integrated, then a higher degree of correlation between the two variables does not mean a causal relationship between the variables. So now, I have already talked about the research methodology. Now coming to the model. So since Granger and Sims, the most widely used operational definition causality is the Granger definition of causality. So first, the augmented Dickey-Fuller test was applied to determine the variables stationarity and order of integration. And if the variables have a different order of integration, then obviously they are not co-integrated and no further investigation of co-integration is needed. Otherwise, if they are integrated, we use the Johansson model and to test the co-integration. So this paper uses the co-integration and error correction model as said before to test the causal relationship between ICT, FDI and economic growth. The analysis were done in a multivariate setting. And I started by considering three variable vector autoregressive model and comprised of ICT, GDP, and FDI, all expressed in natural logs. So now coming to data. So secondary data was collected for investment in telecommunications, and data on GDP and inward FDI were also taken for the study. So, in as said before, in developed countries, there already, exists an ICT capacity, which causes flow of FDI as observed from previous studies. While in countries like India, which are still developing, ICT capacity must be built up to attract FDI. So the inflow of FDI causes further increase in ICT investment and progress in telecommunication services and major currency realignment. So technical progress in telecommunication services facilitates international communications involving parent companies with the opportunity for making profits by undertaking FDI. And telecommunications and information technology increases information availability and accuracy and provides better conditions for businesses. So now coming to the results that were derived from the study. So the co-integrating properties of the variables involved are examined and the empirical results are discussed. The given table presents the results of unit root test obtained using the ADF test. The results support the presence of unit root in all of the series for India. And this is confirmed by the fact that the null hypothesis that the series are non-stationary is not rejected at the levels for all variables. However, the null hypothesis is rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis that the series are stationary when the first difference of the variables is taken. Thus, their differences are found to be stationary and hence all are integrated in order 1. In all cases, the null hypothesis that the series that has unit roots cannot be rejected. The test of unit root suppose the unit root hypothesis at 1%, 5%, and 10% levels of significance for all data series. So having confirmed the existence of unit root for all the data series, the next step that I took was to check the results of Johansson co-integration test presented in the given table. So the test provided the evidence for existence of one co-integration vector, implying that the three variables are co-integrated in fact. Thus, the result of this test integration implies that the long-run association between ICT, real GDP, and inward FDI for India. The empirical results of the estimated error correction models are presented in this table. So beyond the analysis of long-run relationship among the three variables in the system for India, the short-run dynamics also explored performing multivariate Granger causality test for the vector error correction model. So the F statistics and probability for the Granger causality test are presented in the columns, and so it also includes that T statistics for error correction terms for each of the three equations for each variable in the system. At least one channel of Granger causality is active.
either in the short run through the joint test of the lag differences, or in the long run through statistically significant error correction model. So the first interesting observation from our result is that India shows the evidence of bidirectional association or correlation consistent with the notion of causality for ICT and economic growth, that is GDP. So these findings are quite consistent with the theory on ICT and growth, indicating a positive spillover, and ICT is an engine of economic growth of India. The second observation from our results is that India shows evidence of bidirectional relationship consistent with the notion of causality, FDI, and economic growth. So these findings are consistent with the standard literature that I reviewed and previously reviewed. And a third and important observation of this study is that there is a two-way relationship consistent with the same consistent with the notion of causality between ICT and FDI, indicating that ICT is an important determinant of FDI, and FDI promotes ICT. That is well established. So the results of this study find evidence to support the claim that ICT is a strong engine of growth in this region. And in India, there is some evidence of either ICT growth, ICT-led growth, or a growth-led ICT. So, ICT leads to inflows of FDI, and then FDI leads to growth of the economy as a whole. So to finally conclude my presentation, so sorry. So India's software industry, has migrated upward, and high value added, or it has, gained only, it has only taken further steps, and it has improved in the decades, and there's still a lot of scope for ICT sector to still, improve and get better. And so that if investments in the ICT sectors would be increased, so it will lead to increase in the FDI inflows, because as I said, that India is still a developing country, which requires some sort of thing to attract FDI, and then increase in FDI will lead to economic growth of the country as a whole. So that was from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Session chairs, over to you for your inputs. Session chairs.
Yeah, so looking at the FDI in ICT basically. So I agree that almost all the economies, specifically the developing economies, are seeking to improve ICT investment so that they can benefit from the increasing economic activity. And there is a two-way relationship. There is a complementary relationship between ICT and FDI. And world is actually moving towards the economic system that is based on, continuous and pervasive availability of information. Now, for that, India needs to build in the ICT capacity to attract FDI.
Yes,
so that is it from my side. Thank you.
That is exactly what I tried to establish.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
First of all, I just want to know that why have you chosen ICT in particular to test the FDI?
Yeah, so ma'am, I have been, very much interested in the whole IT sector and ICT sector as a whole. So I discussed it with, with my guide, Pooja ma'am, and we, arrived at a decision. So basically, I am an economics student, but that does not mean that, that I cannot pursue my interest. So my interest lied in the IT sector, and, I tried to get to know the IT sector better and how it affects the economy. So, both my aims were kind of getting fulfilled, as to, analyze the economic growth and also to analyze the performance of the IT sector.
Yeah, because I can actually see it in your PPT, like you have actually very well researched upon this, although everyone is aware that, I mean, India attracts mostly the highest FDI in ICT domain only. I mean, there are other domains also, but ICT is one of the leading.
Yes,
and where did you take the data from for ICT?
data were taken from various sites, from World Bank, and the sources were mostly from World Bank. I have taken my data, and the other data was taken from the RBI. Yeah. So and
So actually you can try taking the data from the DPIIT website also, because they actually have a very dedicated section for the FDI, and just try to see if, I mean, obviously RBI and World Bank are fine. And till what year have you taken the data?
Ma'am, my study consisted of the years 1995 to 2019, because the COVID pandemic arrived, and so that I would have to put a break to my study, so I took the years before that.
So any particular since you have taken data from 1995 to 2019, any particular observation, leading observation, or a drastic observation that you have come across?
Yes, ma'am. So the TCS basically established the IT sector in India, and it was in I don't exactly remember the year, but it was in mid 90s to late 90s. And when it was established, there was not a lot of success related to it, but throughout the years, and I think there was a severe jump in the exports of the IT services. As seen in 2012. So there was a, I think, 40% jump from, if we see the data from 1998, I think, to the year 2012.
So, okay, everything is fine. You can just try doing this study from the, Indian states perspectives also. Like, because each and every state of India does not attract equivalent FDI and ICT, and Bangalore could be the leading state where, because it is the IT hub. So, and also you can try it, from the business perspective also. I think that would add to your study, and it could be a complete picture in itself. So that's all from my side.
Thank you for your valuable inputs. I'll definitely keep that in my mind for my further research. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, session chairs. Thank you, Kritika. Due to time constraints, we cannot take the presentations of all the participants, and we will be ending our technical session here. Thank you all for joining in. And before we move forward, let's see what the sponsors have in store for us. Add 3. Yeah. Share sound. 1 minute. 1 minute. Thank you, sponsors. I would request the session chairs to Rimple ma'am and Shivani ma'am, to speak a few words on the conference and how the track was and your experience as a whole, and how us as students could also improve. Yes, ma'am. Shivani ma'am, if we could start with you.
Like, in what aspect exactly do you want me to speak?
No, ma'am, just your experience with us and how
His
everyone.
experience.
Yes, ma'am, and
Yeah.
how everyone is done. Yep.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to say that all the students have really, all the presenters have actually worked very well. And although there were quite a few PPTs that were much more well researched than the other ones, but there are certain, there's a thin line between a researcher and, a businessman, I would say. So it's like everybody just, researched, and few of them were also able to add to the business perspective also, because just simply researching and simply just carrying on the business, both can't be mutually exclusive. So there are certain particular potential PPTs that they just need a little bit of work and could actually do well. And besides that, there were different range of topics that were covered within the umbrella of sustainable development and industry 4.0. So I think the conference did a very well justice, and the presenters also did a very well justice to the theme. So that's all from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. We can, ma'am, Rimple ma'am, if you could.
Yeah, to add on to Shivani, I would like to say that yes, conference has provided a platform for sharing the technological and scientific knowledge, where scholars and researchers have reflected upon the recent growth and advancement in the technology in promotion of sustainable development. It has given the opportunity to researcher to contribute to the latest advancement and its relation with the fourth industrial revolution. So conference has been a success through exchange of ideas, and my heartiest congratulations to all the participants and researchers for their great contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would now like to invite our faculty coordinator for technical session 2, Sustainable Development and New Dimensions in Industry 4.0, Ms. Pooja Mehra, to give the vote of thanks.
I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our session chairs, Dr. Rimple Manchanda and Ms. Shivani Mehrotra, for their precious time and words of wisdom out of their extensive experience, to all the presenters to improvise their research, keeping in view not only the emerging areas, rather the gray areas as well, to make it a published work. I hope our students and presenters got valuable inputs to open up the new dimensions in the industry 4.0. I also thank all the presenters for trusting us. I'm grateful to all the audience for being patient during the session. Last but not the least, I want to thank from the core of my heart to the IT team and the organizing team for making this session a success. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, shall I end the session?
All the members in the session can leave the session right now. The meeting.
All the students and the presenter join us for the high tea, and all the presenters will get their certificates right through mail. The session chairs, I personally contact you and try to courier you or mail you your certificates. Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody for joining.